Hey guys, this is Carrie Ann from Cooking Traditional Foods, www.cookingtf.com, and we are still having more and more questions come in about the Pickl-It. So I want to take a minute to answer just a few more questions that have arrived over the weekend. I've had a lot of questions about how to store Pickl-It. How do you store your lactoferments once your Pickl-It's done? Well, what you do is you follow the guidelines for how long you should leave it out. Things like dill pickles, there's instructions on the Pickl-It website for how to check them and know when they're done. Then you're going to transfer them to storage. Now, what I like to do is I like to leave the airlock on for the first couple of weeks it's in storage until the majority of the carbon dioxide off-gassing ends. At that point, you have two choices. You can switch to a mini airlock, or you can switch to a plugger. Now the plugger comes with a kit. It's a little bitty plug that's made of the same thing that the grommet is, and you just pop it in the top of that grommet and it makes a seal. If your ferments are still producing too much carbon dioxide, it's literally going to pop that plugger out, and the plugger you'll find it laying somewhere in your fridge where it went. So what you want to do is leave the airlock on until you're sure that the off-gassing is done and it's calmed down, and then put the plugger in. If you absolutely can't leave it in a Pickl-It because you just need the jar to do another ferment, then the best option is to transfer it to a Fido jar or another type of totally airtight wire bale locking jar with a thick rubber ring. Okay, again, transferring it to a mason jar is going to give it a constant supply of oxygen. That's not going to be the best thing for your ferments. It's going to reduce the amount of lactic acid bacteria that you have in your ferments. Just not a good situation. If you have to take it out of the Pickl-It, put it in a totally airtight, that means no mason jar, no Tupperware, no plastics type of situation. Have you ever noticed that when you buy yogurt from the store, after a while, if you lose one in the back of your fridge, you open it up, what happens? Well, it gets mold on it. The reason is that that plastic is not airtight. There is some evidence that even the commercial yogurts you buy, the lactic acid bacteria has been greatly reduced in those because of that constant airflow through the plastic. So it's best to avoid storing in plastic, and it's best to make sure that you're using a truly airtight seal in order to get the most benefit. I'm still getting lots of comments and questions about the difference between mason jars, harsh crocks, and Pickl-Its. So let's talk about the ultimate goal of why we're lactofermenting. The ultimate goal is probiotics. To get probiotics into your diet, and not just get probiotics into your diet, but to get as much into your diet as you can in a way that your family finds acceptable. In order to get lactic acid bacteria into your diet, the way you have to accomplish that is an anaerobic environment. You can't get anaerobic environments in something that isn't airtight. That is why I don't recommend a mason jar or open air crock fermentation. If you're going to go to the trouble and the time to make probiotics for your family, especially if you're attempting to heal, then you want to go with the lactic acid bacteria. That means airtight. The only way you're going to get airtight is either in something like a harsh crock that has a water seal around the lip, or a Pickl-It. Now, I do own a harsh crock. It's downstairs. It's huge. I have to run up and downstairs to pack it, and I have to do large batches in order to use it. And if you do large amounts of things like sauerkraut once a year, then that's great. Go for it. I strongly recommend them. I have one myself and I use it. I don't have anything against a harsh. The issue is that a harsh is large. You're very limited on the amounts you can make, as far as you always have to do a big batch. And it's very expensive. Over $100 per jar. and then you still have to pay shipping. They're big, they're heavy, they're extremely expensive to have shipped to you. Okay, I like the Pickl-It because number one, it gives me the anaerobic environment to be able to do lactic acid bacteria and get those benefits into our diet. But it also allows you to do small amounts of ferments. You know, if you go pack a harsh crock full of something that's an experiment and your family decides they don't like it when it's done, you're going to have wasted a ton of time and money, and you're really going to be aggravated. I like having a variety of ferments in my diet. While I love sauerkraut, I don't want to eat it every single day, 3 meals a day, all the time. I would far rather have smaller vessels where I can do a small amount of salsa and we can eat it, and I can do sauerkraut when I feel like it, and I can keep my water kefir going, and when I'd like to do some dairy kefir, I can do that, you know, in and out as I need to, and I'm not having to make large batches. And if I want to try something with a new spice combination that I haven't tried before, I can make a small amount, and I'm not committed to it, and I'm not throwing away a ton of money if I have to pour it out. Now, let's look at the cost differences. If you buy a 1.5 liter Pickl-It, including shipping to North Carolina, it was going to be $40, okay? If you buy 2 or more, the shipping costs just go up a tiny amount. So it's far better to go order a bundle, you know, even if you get just a small bundle, get you a nice variety in sizes of jars, and do something like that. You'll spend about the same as you would have on a harsh, or maybe even less. You'll be able to do a much wider variety, and your kids will be more likely to accept it because they're not having sauerkraut shoved at them 3 times a day, or worse, 5-6 times a day. You can sneak probiotic foods in so many places if you just have a variety of them. We'll be going over some ideas to get more probiotic foods past just putting a tablespoon of sauerkraut on everybody's plate at every meal in future blogs and video blog posts. Don't be afraid to try the Pickl-It. It's a good quality product. It winds up saving you a lot of money in the long run. If you are taking probiotics, you can get more probiotic in a tablespoon of water kefir that's been properly brewed than you're going to get in 1 probiotic pill. That water kefir is going to cost you pennies, and that pill is going to cost you $1, maybe more, per pill. And some of those pills you have to take multiples a day. Let's be honest, this is a far cheaper solution in the long run, even though it does have some upfront investment costs. It's like anything else you do in your kitchen, buying a blender, a toaster, even a juicer, a grain mill. Yes, there is some upfront cost, but in the long run, it saves you a lot of money, and it's well worth the investment. I've been getting lots of questions about when you know a ferment is finished, when your initial fermentation is done. So here's how you tell. You take your Pickl-It jar and you jiggle it, or you just gently bounce it, very gently, bounce it up and down. And if you see bubbles rising, then that means it's still in an active stage of fermentation. You need to give it some time, wait, and wait until you don't see bubbles. For most products, that's going to be somewhere between 3 and 10 days, depending on what you're fermenting and how much you're doing. At that point, you can transfer it to your refrigerator and switch to a mini airlock, but not a plugger. In the case of pickles, what you want to do is take a pickle out of your Pickl-It and cut it open. You want to see even all the way through. You don't want to see any white areas that look streaked or circular or anything like that. That shows you that it has not totally fermented all the way. So just pop it back in the Pickl-It, cover it back up, sit it on your counter, and let it go a day or 2 longer and check it again. Depending on what you're fermenting and the size of the container, it's going to take somewhere between 7 and 10 days for the first ferment. Once your pickle is totally even all the way through and you see no white, then you know they're ready to be transferred to cold storage. I've had some people ask, what's the best way to keep all the vegetables under the brine? Well, when you're doing certain things like sauerkraut, you will have little pieces that'll float, and you want to try to keep those submerged. So the best way that I've found to handle that is not to put leaves across the top or things like that. I believe that the best way to deal with it is the way that I learned on the Pickl-It website. You take a carrot and you take your vegetable peeler and you just shave off pieces, and then you use it to design a spoke. Design spokes on a wheel. You just crisscross the pieces until the entire surface is covered, and you place the dunker on top and just very gently mash it down to make sure that the surface of the vegetables is at least an inch below the brine. That way the carbon dioxide bubbles can escape, but everything remains submerged, and so it all ferments equally.